feed. And it goes on, if you give zihar to your wife, if you say that you are haram to me like my mother or like my sister, then you have to also feed. So everything almost is covered by feeding the food, because this is something that people and others benefit from. In Islam, the Prophet ﷺ instructed us that when we cook, that we increase the broth of the meal so that we can have something to give to our neighbors. And this is something that a lot of Muslims nowadays don't do. You have to share the food with your neighbors, especially if they are needy, because if you go to bed with a full stomach while your neighbor is hungry, the Prophet said ﷺ that you are not a true believer. And Islam encourages throwing dinner parties, such as walima. When you get married, you call people to eat. When you are blessed with a child, you call people to come and eat. But the Prophet ﷺ gave us a warning, and he said that this meal is not blessed if you only invite the rich and the dignitary and you neglect the poor and those who people do not care for. And then the Prophet says, alayhi salatu wasalam, spread the peace and feed the poor, to the needy, uphold the ties of kinship. In Arabic this is called silatu al-arham or silatu al-rahim. This is one of the greatest forms of worship, again, that people have neglected. And what is your rahim? Who are your kinship? They are the people relating to you from your mother's side or from your father's side. So your uncles, aunts, cousins, they are all considered to be your rahim, your next of kin. And you must connect to them, relate to them. If they are poor, you have to support them financially. If they are ill, you have to help them. If they are well off, you have to communicate with them every now and then by checking up on them and keeping the ties connected with them. And Abu Ayyub al-Ansari tells us that the Prophet ﷺ was approached by a man, and this man told the Prophet ﷺ that direct me to something that makes me enter paradise. So the Prophet said ﷺ, worship Allah and don't associate any others with Him, and pray on time and give the zakat and connect to the next of kin. So connecting to the next of kin is not something that is to be taken lightly. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that paradise will not be entered by someone who reaches his relations with the next of kin. If you have a cousin that you don't talk to, then you will not enter paradise. If you have an uncle that you have not seen for 20 or 30 years without any reason, and you're not talking to him, you're not calling him, you're not checking on him, you will not enter paradise. And the problem is that I know personally people who do not speak to their brothers, and it's been going on for about 15 or 16 years, and they live in the same city. And the reason, one of the silliest reasons ever, he did not invite me to a dinner party and he invited his friends. So he didn't do this. I'll not talk to him for 15 years. And it's still going on, subhanallah. These people definitely are not practicing believers. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment must connect to the next of kin. He has to connect the relations. He has to keep the ties of kinship. And if you look at the closest of your kinship are your parents. Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, was once on his mule. He saw a nomad, a Bedouin, and gave it to him, and gave the mule to that nomad and left. So his companion said, Yani, if you given him 1 or 2 dirham, that would be a great fortune for him. Why give him all of this? He said his father was a friend to Umar ibn Khattab, and Umar is dead. So I wanted to do something that would please Umar in his grave, may Allah be pleased with him. So it's sort of keeping the ties of kinship to my father through being kind to this son of a friend of my father. And connecting to the next of kin is not only something that pleases Allah, this is enough and more than enough to please Allah, but it's also something that's beneficial to you. Who doesn't want money? Again, same question. It revolves around it. You want to increase your income? The Prophet says, ﷺ, whoever wants his income to be increased, Allah to increase his provisions, and to prolong his lifespan, he must keep the ties of kinship. He must connect to his next of kin. This means that if you do this, Allah will increase your provisions and Allah will increase your money through connecting to your next of kin, calling them, visiting them, checking up on them. And by Allah, I tried this myself. And I did find results, alhamdulillah. Don't ask me for loans, but I'm well off. I tried this, I practiced this. Wallahi, Allah paid so many debts on me and gave me money from places I did not even consider. I have relatives of mine that do not call me or visit me for the past 18 years. And I'm calling them every week and checking on them. It's cost me like pennies and my mobile phone. Whenever I go to their cities, I visit them. I try to visit them. But I just do it. And my kids say, they never call. Why do you call them? I said, I don't call them for their sake. I'm calling them for the sake of Allah. And I find it. I find the result in this life. So I'm hoping, inshallah, Allah is saving much more for me on the Day of Judgment. So this, you put it in mind, and Allah Azza wa Jal would give it to you in this life and in the hereafter. But how do I connect to the next of kin? If they do not connect me, the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that when a man came to him and said, "O Prophet of Allah, I have relatives of mine. I keep the ties of kinship and they sever it and cut it. I am kind to them and they're harsh to me. I don't offend them and they always offend me. So what should I do?" The Prophet says, "Alayhi, continue doing what you're doing. And by Allah, Allah will appoint an angel with you defending you." We don't see angels, huh? We believe in them, but we don't see them. They're with you every minute and every second. And the more you are closer to Allah, the more they are protecting you and they are always with you. Allah threatened us and warned us by saying, "Would you then, if you were given the authority, do mischief? Such are they whom in the land, and sever your ties of kinship." Severing the ties of kinship is next to spreading mischief in the land. And believe me that this is fighting your arrogance when you connect to the next of kin. This is fighting your inner soul, because each one of us has an amount of dignity that is amplified by shaitan. Don't talk to your cousin. He never calls you. He did not invite you to his daughter's wedding. Why should you be kind to him? Why should you let people look down at you? And you find your loved ones saying the same thing. You find those close to you trying to add more fuel to the fire, and that is why you see people separating and being away from each other.